The breaking point. The hospital room smelled of antiseptic and something else Arya couldn't name, maybe despair. She opened her eyes slowly, her body heavy with medications and a deeper heaviness she didn't want to acknowledge. The afternoon light filtered through Venetian blinds, casting stripes across the white sheets that felt too crisp, too clean for the messiness of what had just happened. Her hand instinctively moved to her stomach, now flat and achingly empty. 16 weeks. They'd made it to 16 weeks. They'd heard the heartbeat. They'd seen the tiny hands on the ultrasound, fingers already formed and perfect. Arya had started a secret Pinterest board for the nursery. Ethan had been researching the best car seats, making spreadsheets in that methodical way of his that always made her smile. But now there was nothing. Just the phantom weight of what should have been. The nurse who came to check her vitals had kind eyes that couldn't quite hide the pity. "Your friend Sophie called again," she said gently. "Should I tell her she can visit now? Visiting hours end at 8. "My husband," Arya's voice came out scratchy and small. "Has he come back?" The nurse's expression shifted slightly, a practiced neutrality that told Arya everything. "I'm sure he'll be here soon, honey. The doctor said you came through the procedure beautifully. You'll be able to go home tomorrow morning." Home? To what? To whom? After the nurse left, Arya stared at the ceiling tiles and counted the small holes in each square, anything to keep her mind from the echo of earlier that morning. She'd woken from the anesthesia asking for Ethan, and the recovery nurse had said he'd stepped out to take a call. That was 4 hours ago. Her phone sat on the rolling table beside her bed. 3 missed calls from Sophie, 1 text from Ethan. "Important meeting with Dad came up. Mom says these things happen for a reason. I'll be there soon. Love you." These things happen for a reason? Arya felt something crack inside her that had nothing to do with her physical body. She'd met Margaret and Robert Sullivan before she'd married Ethan, had sensed their cool assessment of her, a graphic designer from a middle-class family, not quite the match they'd envisioned for their architect son with the prestigious firm. But Ethan had been so sure, so loving, so determined that his parents would come around. When she'd gotten pregnant, their response had been measured. "It's quite soon," Margaret had said over brunch, her diamond rings catching the light as she cut her eggs Benedict with surgical precision. "You've only been married 8 months," Ethan had said firmly, taking Arya's hand across the table. "Of course," Robert had added, but his smile hadn't reached his eyes. "Children are a significant responsibility. I hope you've considered the financial implications." Arya had felt small then, but she'd pushed it away. They'd love the baby once it arrived. Everyone did. That's what she'd told herself during the sleepless first trimester nights, through the morning sickness that lasted all day, through every subtle slight. But when she'd started bleeding yesterday morning, when the cramping had turned into something terrifying, when Ethan had driven her to the emergency room with trembling hands, she'd called his parents from the car. They'd been the first call after 911 because she thought, despite everything, that a grandchild in danger would transcend their coldness. Margaret had answered on the 3rd ring. "Hello?" "Mom!" Arya gasped between contractions, using the title that still felt foreign on her tongue. "Something is wrong with the baby. We're going to the hospital." Silence. Then, "These early pregnancies are quite fragile. I'm sure the doctors will tell you what you need to know. Keep us updated." The line had gone dead. Now, lying in the recovery room with the weight of absence pressing down on her chest, Arya understood. She'd lost more than a baby today. She'd lost the illusion that she was part of Ethan's family. She'd lost the belief that when things got hard, the people who were supposed to love you would show up. The door opened, and for one desperate moment her heart lifted. But it was Sophie, not Ethan, who rushed to her bedside with red-rimmed eyes and arms full of the kind of love Arya needed. "Oh, honey," Sophie whispered, gathering her carefully. "I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry." Arya let herself cry then, finally, the kind of crying that came from somewhere beyond tears. Sophie held her and said nothing because there was nothing to say. and Arya was grateful for that truth. It was another hour before Ethan arrived, carrying guilt in the slope of his shoulders and expensive flowers that meant nothing. He looked at her with those blue eyes she'd fallen in love with 3 years ago, eyes that now held an apology he couldn't quite speak. The meeting ran long. Dad needed me to sign some papers, and your mom thought wrong, and so did you, Arya interrupted quietly. She watched him flinch, watched him struggle to find words that might undo the past 5 hours. But there were no words, and they both knew it. Some absences couldn't be explained away. Arya, I'm sorry. You thought what, Ethan? That your parents' business meeting was more important than being here when I lost our baby? That your mother's opinion about these things mattered more than holding my hand? That's not fair. No, Arya agreed, turning her face to the window where evening was beginning to darken the sky. It's not fair. None of this is fair. He sat beside her bed, reaching for her hand, and she let him take it because she was too tired to fight. But she felt the distance between them now, wide as an ocean, deep as the grief that was just beginning to make itself known. When Sophie finally left and the night nurse came to give Arya another round of pain medication, Ethan had fallen asleep in the chair beside her, his hand still loosely holding hers. She looked at him in the dim light, this man she'd married, this man she'd trusted with everything, and wondered if she even knew him at all. Tomorrow she would go home to a house that still had a shopping bag from the baby store tucked in the closet, to a life that would never be the same. But tonight, alone, despite his presence, Arya made herself a promise. She would heal. She would survive this, and she would make sure that Ethan understood exactly what his choice had cost them both. Because love without action wasn't love. It was just a pretty word that meant nothing when the world fell apart.
The silent treatment. The house felt different when they returned. Arya noticed things she'd overlooked before. How the morning light hit the kitchen counter where she'd taken that first positive pregnancy test. How the spare bedroom door stayed perpetually closed now, hiding the rocking chair Ethan's colleague had given them early. Everything was exactly as they'd left it, but nothing would ever be the same. Ethan hovered. That was the only word for it. He brought her tea she didn't ask for, fluffed pillows she didn't need, and offered conversation she couldn't bear. His guilt manifested in constant motion, as if staying busy might somehow erase the hours he'd spent elsewhere when she needed him most. "I called Dr. Morrison," he said on the third morning, standing in the bedroom doorway while Arya stared at the ceiling. "She has an opening next week for a follow-up. I'll take the morning off to drive you." "I'll drive myself," Arya replied flatly. "Arya, let me help, please." She finally looked at him, really looked at him. He'd barely slept. She could see it in the shadows under his eyes and the way his shoulders sagged. But her empathy felt buried under layers of something harder, something that tasted like betrayal. "You want to help now. Where was that impulse 4 days ago?" "I made a mistake, a terrible mistake, but I'm here now." "You're here now," she repeated, testing the words. How generous. She watched him flinch, watched the impact of her coldness hit its mark. Some small, wounded part of her felt satisfied. Good. Let him feel a fraction of what she'd felt, waking up alone with empty arms and an emptier future. Sophie came by every afternoon, bringing food Arya couldn't eat and company she desperately needed. On day 5, sitting on the back porch while Ethan was at work, Sophie finally broke the careful silence they'd been maintaining. "You can't freeze him out forever," Sophie said gently. "Watch me." "Arya, I'm not defending what he did. It was inexcusable. But he's drowning in guilt, and I'm what, being too hard on him?" Arya's voice rose. "I lost our baby. I woke up from surgery alone. His mother told me it happened for a reason, like I'd lost a goldfish instead of a child. And he chose them. He chose a business meeting over being there when our world fell apart. I know." Sophie reached for her hand. "And you have every right to your anger. But I also know you, and I can see what you're doing. You're trying to make him hurt the way you hurt. Is that so wrong?" "No," Sophie admitted. "It's human. But ask yourself, is it helping you heal, or is it just creating more pain? Arya didn't have an answer. She only knew that every time Ethan tried to bridge the gap between them, something in her recoiled. She'd moved to the guest room that first night home, claiming she needed space to recover physically, but they both knew it was more than that. A week after the miscarriage, Margaret finally called. Arya stared at the name on her phone screen for 3 rings before answering. Arya, darling, I wanted to check how you're feeling. Darling, as if they were close, as if Margaret had been there. I'm managing, Arya said carefully. Good, good. These things take time, of course, but you're young. There will be other opportunities. Margaret's voice carried that same measured tone she used for everything, from discussing weather to dismissing grief. Actually, I'm calling because Robert and I would like to have you and Ethan for dinner this Sunday. It's been too long since we've all been together properly. Something cold and sharp crystallized in Arya's chest. An idea. A terrible, necessary idea. That sounds lovely, she heard herself say. What time? After she hung up, Arya sat with her phone in her hands, thinking. Sophie was right. She was trying to make Ethan hurt. But it wasn't cruelty, it was necessity. He needed to understand what his absence had cost. He needed to feel the isolation, the betrayal, the crushing weight of being let down by the people who were supposed to love you most. Only then could they even begin to rebuild, if rebuilding was even possible.
Mirrors of pain. The days following the disastrous dinner settled into an uneasy routine. Ethan tried harder, and Arya withdrew deeper. But something had shifted in her after confronting his parents. She'd found her voice again, and with it, a clarity about what needed to happen. She couldn't just tell Ethan about her pain. He needed to feel it. The opportunity came 2 weeks later when Ethan called her from his office, his voice tight with stress. The Riverside project presentation got moved up to tomorrow, he said. I've been working on it for 3 months, and suddenly the investors want to see it a day early. I'm completely unprepared. That sounds stressful, Arya said, her tone neutral. Would you be able to bring me my external hard drive, the black one from my desk? It has all my backup files. I know it's a lot to ask, but I'm desperate here. Arya looked at the hard drive sitting on his desk in their home office. She could be there in 20 minutes. She could help him, support him, be the partner he'd failed to be for her. I have a doctor's appointment this afternoon. I don't think I can make it, she said instead. You do? His surprise was evident. You didn't mention. Should I have? I figured I could handle it myself. Medical things are so stressful, after all. That's what your mother said, right? Silence on the other end. Then, quietly, Arya, this is my career. And that was my life. She kept her voice even, matter of fact. The life of our child. But you had that meeting with your father. I'm sure you understand. This isn't the same thing. Isn't it? You're asking for help with something important to you. I'm not available. Sounds familiar, doesn't it? She could hear him breathing on the other end, could imagine him running his hand through his hair the way he did when frustrated. So this is punishment? No, Arya said honestly. This is perspective. Good luck with your presentation, Ethan. I'm sure you'll figure something out. She hung up before he could respond. Her hands were shaking, and she felt simultaneously powerful and terrible. Sophie's words echoed in her mind. Is it helping you heal, or just creating more pain? But Arya pushed them away. Sometimes people needed to feel the consequences of their actions. Sometimes that was the only way they learned. Ethan came home late that night, exhausted and frustrated. The presentation had gone poorly without his complete files. His firm's senior partner had questioned his preparedness. It had been, by all accounts, a disaster. I needed you today, he said, standing in the doorway of the guest room where Arya was reading. I know, she replied, not looking up from her book.
And you deliberately didn't help me? I had an appointment. Did you? Did you really have an appointment, Arya? Or were you making a point? She finally looked at him, marked her page, and closed the book. Does it matter? Either way, you were alone when you needed support. Either way, something important to you suffered because I wasn't there. How does it feel? It feels terrible, his voice cracked. It feels like the person I love doesn't care about me anymore. Now you're getting it. Arya stood up, facing him. That's exactly how I felt waking up in that hospital room. That's exactly how I felt when your mother dismissed our baby's death like it was nothing. That's exactly how I felt every day since, knowing that when it mattered most, you weren't there. So what, we just trade wounds now? We just hurt each other until we're even? We're not even close to even, Ethan. Her eyes filled with tears. You lost a bad day at work. I lost our child and my faith in you on the same day. Those scales will never balance. He stared at her, and she saw the moment something finally broke through his defenses. Not understanding yet, but the beginning of it. The recognition that apologies and guilt weren't enough, that he needed to feel her abandonment to truly comprehend it. I don't know how to make this right, he whispered. I don't either, Arya admitted. But I know making tea and buying flowers isn't it. I know protecting your parents' feelings isn't it. And I know pretending everything is fine when it's not isn't it. Then tell me, please, tell me what you need. I need you to stand up to them. The words came out fierce and certain. I need you to choose me over them, not just in words, but in actions. I need you to understand what it cost me to be alone in that hospital room, and I need you to prove that it will never happen again. Ethan sank onto the edge of the bed, his head in his hands. They're my parents, and I'm your wife, your partner, the woman who lost your child. If you can't prioritize that, if you can't set boundaries with them, then I don't know what we're doing here. She left him sitting there and went to the kitchen, her heart pounding. She felt cruel and justified in equal measure, powerful and broken at the same time. This wasn't the woman she had been before. That woman had been softer, quicker to forgive, more willing to smooth over conflicts. But that woman had also ended up alone in a hospital room, learning the hard way that softness could be exploited. Over the next week, Arya continued her quiet campaign of absence. When Ethan's car broke down and he needed a ride, she was too exhausted to help. When he asked her opinion on an important work decision, she was too distracted to focus. When he reached for her hand watching television, she was too cold and went to get a sweater, breaking the contact. Each small withdrawal was a lesson, a mirror held up to his own behavior. She watched him grow quieter, more withdrawn. She watched frustration give way to something deeper, hurt, confusion, and finally, a dawning comprehension. On Friday evening, Sophie came over and found Arya sitting in the darkened living room, staring at nothing. "How long are you going to keep this up?" Sophie asked gently, sitting beside her. "I don't know. Until he gets it. Until he really understands. And if he never does, if this just destroys what's left of your marriage, then maybe it wasn't worth saving." But Arya's voice wavered. "Sophie, I don't know what I'm doing. I just know I can't pretend everything is okay. I can't go back to the way we were." "No one's asking you to do that. But there's a difference between making him understand and making him suffer. One might save your marriage. The other will definitely end it." That night, Arya found an envelope slipped under the guest room door. Inside was a letter, several pages in Ethan's handwriting. "Arya, I don't know if you'll read this, but I need to write it anyway. I need to try to find words for something I'm only just beginning to understand. You're right about everything. I've been telling myself I made a mistake,
that I had a moment of weakness, that if I just apologized enough, it would be okay. But it's not a mistake when you choose something. And I chose wrong. I chose my parents' expectations over your pain. I chose business over being present. I chose the path of least resistance instead of the harder path of standing up for you. I've been spending this week feeling what you must have felt. The loneliness of needing someone and having them absent. The hurt of asking for help and being dismissed. The confusion of loving someone who suddenly feels unreachable. It's terrible. It makes me feel small and angry and desperate. But here's what I'm realizing. You felt all that while also dealing with physical pain, grief, and the loss of our baby. You felt all that in a hospital room, alone, when you should have been surrounded by love. And I put you there, not just by being absent, but by choosing my parents' priorities over yours for our entire relationship. I see it now. How many times I've made you come second. How many times I've defended their coldness or made excuses for their behavior. How many times I've asked you to be understanding instead of asking them to be kind. You've been compromising and accommodating and hoping they'd warm up to you, and I've been letting you do all that emotional labor alone. I don't know how to fix this. I don't know if I can. But I'm starting to understand why you're doing what you're doing. You're not trying to hurt me. You're trying to teach me. You're holding up a mirror to my actions because I was too blind to see them otherwise. I'm sorry doesn't cover it, but I am. I'm sorrier than I've ever been about anything in my life. And I'm ready to do more than apologize. I'm ready to change. I'm ready to choose you, even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard. Tell me what you need. Tell me how to begin making this right. I'm listening now. Finally, truly listening. I love you. I never stopped. I just forgot how to show it in the ways that matter. Ethan. Arya read the letter 3 times, tears streaming down her face. It wasn't enough. Words alone could never be enough. But it was a beginning. It was the first real acknowledgement, not just of what he'd done, but of the pattern that had led to it.
The turning. The letter sat on Arya's nightstand for 2 days before she responded. She read it each morning, searching for signs of manipulation or empty promises, but found only raw honesty. Still, honesty wasn't action. Understanding wasn't change. And she'd learned the hard way that good intentions dissolved under pressure. On Sunday morning, she found Ethan in the kitchen making coffee. He looked up when she entered, hopeful and guarded at once. "I read your letter," she said quietly. And words are easy, Ethan. They cost nothing. I need to see if you mean them." He nodded slowly, setting down his mug. "Tell me how." "Your parents are having their anniversary party next weekend. Your mother called yesterday to confirm we're coming." Arya watched his face carefully. "I think you should go alone." "What?" "No. Arya, if you want me to set boundaries, I need to do it with you there. I don't want to be there. I don't want to smile and pretend with people who showed me such cruelty. But more than that, I need to know you can stand up to them when I'm not in the room, when it's just you and them and the choice to defend me even when it's uncomfortable." Ethan's jaw tightened. "They're going to ask where you are." "I know. That's the point." The week passed with a tension that was somehow different from before. Not the cold distance Arya had maintained, but something more like anticipation. Ethan asked her several times if she was sure, and each time she was. This was the test that mattered. On the day of the party, Ethan dressed in his suit and stood by the door, keys in hand. "Last chance? Come with me. We'll face them together." "No," Arya said firmly. "This is something you need to do alone. For us. But more importantly, for yourself." After he left, she sat in the empty house and tried not to imagine all the ways this could go wrong. Sophie had offered to come over, but Arya had declined. She needed to sit with her own thoughts,
her own fears, her own hopes. Her phone rang 2 hours later. Ethan's name flashed on the screen. "I told them," he said without preamble, his voice shaking slightly. "I told them everything." Arya's heart pounded. "What happened?" "My mother asked where you were the moment I walked in, loudly, in front of everyone. Said it was disrespectful that you couldn't make time for their anniversary. And I couldn't do it anymore. I couldn't stand there and make excuses." "Ethan, I told her you weren't coming because you're still recovering from the miscarriage. I told her recovery is harder when the people who should support you abandon you instead. I told her I was ashamed of how they treated you and how I enabled it." His voice cracked. "My dad told me I was being dramatic. My mother said I was embarrassing them in front of their friends. And I told them that they embarrassed themselves by caring more about appearances than about their son's wife losing a baby." Arya sank onto the couch, her hand pressed to her mouth. "My dad told me to leave if I was going to be disrespectful. So, I left." 30 years of doing everything they expected, and I walked out of their anniversary party because they couldn't admit they were wrong. I'm sitting in my car outside a coffee shop, and I have no idea if I just destroyed my relationship with my parents. "Where are you?" Arya asked. "Tell me where you are." 20 minutes later, she pulled into the parking lot and found Ethan's car. He was sitting in the driver's seat, still in his suit, looking lost. She knocked on the window, and when he looked up, she saw tears on his face. He got out of the car, and they stood facing each other in the parking lot while evening darkened around them. "I'm sorry," he said. "I'm so sorry it took me this long. I'm sorry I didn't do this the day you came home from the hospital. I'm sorry I chose them over and over again until you had to show me how much it hurt. I'm sorry I had to hurt you to make you see it," Arya replied, her own tears starting. "I hated doing that. I hated becoming someone who could be that cold. You weren't cold. You were protecting yourself. You were teaching me something I should have already known." He took a hesitant step closer. "I don't know if they'll ever speak to me again, but I know I can't have a relationship with them if it costs me your relationship with you. They're your parents, Ethan. I don't want to be the reason you lose them. You're not the reason. Their inability to admit fault is the reason. Their coldness is the reason. Their refusal to see you as family is the reason." He reached for her hands, and this time she let him take them. "I choose you, Arya. I'm choosing you. I should have chosen you that day in the hospital and every day since, but I'm choosing you now, and I'll keep choosing you." Something in Arya's chest loosened, a knot she'd been carrying for weeks finally beginning to unravel. "I need you to understand something. This isn't about making you choose between your family and me. It's about you standing up for what's right. It's about you setting boundaries with people who hurt the person you love. I know that now. I finally understand." He squeezed her hands. "I found a therapist. Her name is Dr. Chen. I made us an appointment for Wednesday, if you're willing. I want to work on this, really work on it. Not just apologize and hope it gets better, but actually do the hard work of changing." Arya studied his face, seeing something she hadn't seen before. Not just remorse, but determination, resolve, the kind of strength that came from making a difficult choice and standing by it. "Okay," she said finally. "Wednesday. We'll try." The relief that washed over his face was profound. He pulled her into his arms carefully, as if she might break or disappear. She let herself lean into him, let herself feel his heartbeat against her cheek, let herself remember why she'd fallen in love with this man in the first place. "Can we go home?" he asked quietly. "Yes, let's go home." That night, Arya didn't sleep in the guest room. She didn't sleep in their bed either. Instead, they sat together on the living room couch talking until sunrise. Really talking, in a way they hadn't in months, maybe longer. Ethan told her about growing up with parents who valued achievement over emotion, about learning to prioritize their approval above his own needs. Arya told him about the loneliness of the past weeks, about how close she'd come to giving up entirely. "I've been thinking about what happens next," Ethan said, as dawn light began filtering through the windows. "With my parents, I mean. I think I need to set some clear boundaries. They don't get to dismiss you or our loss. They don't get to act like nothing happened. If they want a relationship with me, with us, they need to acknowledge what they did and genuinely apologize to you. What if they won't? Then I guess I'll have to learn to live with that. He turned to face her. I know it sounds easy to say now, sitting here with you, but I mean it. I can't keep letting them hurt you. I can't keep being the person who stands by and watches it happen. It's gonna be hard, Arya warned. They're not going to change easily. They might not change at all. I know, but I'd rather be in a difficult relationship with my parents than lose you. That's not even a question anymore. Wednesday's therapy session was harder than Arya expected. Dr. Chen, a woman in her 50s with kind eyes and an unsettling ability to see through deflection, asked them both to describe what had happened from their perspectives. Hearing Ethan recount his version, understanding now how his parents had systematically trained him to prioritize their needs, how he'd internalized that pattern, helped Arya see him with more compassion. But Dr. Chen didn't let her off easy either. Arya, I understand the impulse to make Ethan feel what you felt, but I want to ask you something difficult. At what point does teaching become punishment? At what point does making someone understand cross into making them hurt for its own sake? Arya shifted uncomfortably. I needed him to understand. And did he? Did making him feel abandoned help him comprehend your experience? Or did it just create more pain for both of you? Both, Arya admitted quietly. It did both. That's honest, Dr. Chen nodded. Now I want you to consider this. Your anger is valid. Your hurt is valid, but you can't heal a relationship by continuing to wound it. You can set boundaries, you can demand change, you can refuse to accept less than you deserve, but you can't build something new while you're still tearing down what remains. The words hit Arya hard. She'd been so focused on making Ethan understand that she hadn't considered what came after understanding. She hadn't thought about forgiveness, about rebuilding, about the possibility of something better than what they had before. Over the next few weeks, small changes accumulated into something larger. Ethan went to therapy alone on Tuesdays, working through his family dynamics and learning to set boundaries. They went together on Wednesdays, slowly, carefully, rebuilding trust. He called his parents once, a difficult conversation where he held firm on his boundaries despite their anger and hurt feelings. And slowly, carefully, Arya let him back in. It started with small things. She let him hold her hand during their evening walks. She accepted his offer to make dinner. She laughed at one of his terrible jokes, surprising them both. Each small gesture felt like a risk, like opening a door she'd kept locked for protection, but it also felt like breathing again, like remembering that she was capable of softness as well as strength. One evening, 3 weeks after the anniversary party confrontation, Ethan came home with a small package. He said hesitantly, I got you something. If it's too much, you don't have to. Arya opened the box to find a delicate silver necklace with a tiny pendant, a fingerprint, impossibly small and perfect. It's from the ultrasound picture, Ethan explained quietly. The one at 12 weeks where you could see the hands forming. I had them make the fingerprint from that image. I wanted us to have something to remember, to honor what we lost.
Rebuilding love. Spring arrived slowly, as if nature itself understood the need for gradual transformation. Arya watched cherry blossoms bloom from the kitchen window, each delicate flower a small reminder that beautiful things could grow even after harsh winters. 3 months had passed since the confrontation at the anniversary party. 3 months of weekly therapy sessions, difficult conversations, and the painstaking work of rebuilding trust. Ethan's relationship with his parents remained strained. They'd sent one letter, formal and distant, acknowledging that perhaps they could have handled things differently. It wasn't the apology Arya deserved, but Ethan had held firm. Until they could genuinely acknowledge their cruelty, family dinners and superficial pleasantries were off the table. You're allowed to miss them, Arya told him one evening when she found him staring at his phone, his father's name in the contacts. I do miss them, he admitted, but I don't miss who I was around them, the version of me that made you come second. He set the phone down. Dr. Chen says it's possible to grieve a relationship even when you're the one who chose to change it. She's right.
Arya sat beside him. "I'm sorry you had to make that choice." "I'm not." He turned to her, his expression clear. "Because the alternative was losing you, and that's not a choice at all. That's just unthinkable." They developed new rituals to replace the old ones. Saturday mornings meant farmers' market visits, picking out fresh flowers and ingredients for dinner. Sunday evenings meant cooking together, working side by side in a kitchen filled with music and laughter instead of silence and tension. Tuesday nights were sacred, therapy nights, followed by quiet time to process whatever had come up in their sessions. And on the last Friday of each month, they visited the small memorial garden they'd planted together in their backyard. A Japanese maple tree stood at its center, young and resilient, with a small stone marker at its base that read simply, "Remembered, loved, always." "I brought something," Arya said on one of these visits, pulling out a small journal. "Dr. Chen suggested we write letters to the baby, things we wanted to say, hopes we had, memories from the pregnancy." She opened to the first page. "I wrote one. Would you like to hear it?" Ethan nodded, his hand finding hers. She read quietly, her words painting a picture of the future they'd imagined, a child with his eyes and her determination, bedtime stories and scraped knees, first days of school and proud parent moments. When she finished, tears tracked down both their faces. "Can I write one too?" Ethan asked. "I hoped you would." They spent the evening there writing and sharing, grieving together in a way they hadn't been able to before. It hurt, but it was a clean hurt, like lancing a wound so it could finally heal properly. The next week, Sophie came over for dinner, her first visit in a while. She'd given them space to work through things, checking in with texts but respecting their need for privacy. Now, watching them move around the kitchen together, Ethan chopping vegetables while Arya stirred sauce, their movements synchronized in a way that spoke of renewed intimacy, Sophie smiled. "You two look different, somehow. Lighter." "We're getting there," Arya said, meeting Ethan's eyes across the kitchen. "It's not perfect, we still have hard days, but we're figuring it out." "The hard days are different now," Ethan added. "Before, I would shut down or default to what my parents would think. Now we talk about it. We work through it together." "I'm proud of you both," Sophie said sincerely. "What you've done, the work you've put in, it's not easy. Most couples wouldn't make it through what you went through." "We almost didn't," Arya admitted. "There were days I thought about leaving, days I thought the hurt was too deep to heal." "What changed?" Sophie asked gently. Arya considered the question. I think I realized that making him hurt wasn't actually what I wanted. What I wanted was for him to see me, really see me, and choose me anyway. And he did. Not right away, not easily, but he did." That night, after Sophie left, Arya and Ethan sat on their back porch watching fireflies dance in the darkness. The memorial garden glowed softly in the moonlight, peaceful and permanent. Ethan said, "I've been thinking about something, and I want to know how you feel about it. No pressure, no expectations." "Okay." Arya braced herself, unsure what was coming. "Dr. Chen mentioned support groups for couples who've experienced pregnancy loss. I thought maybe, if you wanted, we could go together, not to replace our therapy, but in addition to it, to connect with people who understand." Arya turned to him, surprised. "You'd want to do that?" "I want to do whatever helps us heal, whatever honors what we went through and what we lost." He took her hand. "I've been reading about miscarriage, about the statistics, about how common it is and how silent. And I keep thinking about how alone you must have felt, not just in the hospital, but in general, like you were carrying this grief that nobody wanted to acknowledge." "I did feel that way," Arya said softly. "Your mother's comment about these things happening for a reason made me feel like I wasn't allowed to grieve, like it was inappropriate to be sad about something so common. That's exactly why I want to go to the support group, so you know you're not alone, so we can learn from other couples who've walked this path." He squeezed her hand. "And selfishly, so I can learn how to be a better support for you, how to honor our baby's memory in ways that help rather than hurt." Arya felt tears prick her eyes, not from pain this time, but from gratitude.
This was who Ethan had become, someone who thought about her needs, who researched ways to help, who wasn't afraid to admit he needed guidance. "Yes," she said, "let's go together." The support group met Thursday evenings in a community center downtown. Walking in the first time, Aria felt nervous, exposed. But as she listened to other couples share their stories, the losses, the loneliness, the complicated grief that came with losing something most people couldn't see or understand, she felt less alone than she had in months. When it was their turn to share, Ethan spoke first. "I failed my wife when she needed me most," he said, his voice steady but emotional. "I let other people's priorities and my own cowardice keep me from being there for her. I'm here because I'm learning that love isn't just a feeling, it's a choice you make every day, especially on the days when it's hard." Aria added her own story, talking about the isolation of the hospital, the slow journey back to trust, the work of forgiveness that was still ongoing. Around the circle, people nodded with understanding, and Aria realized that healing didn't require being perfect or having all the answers. It just required showing up, being honest, and doing the work. Weeks turned into months, and slowly the sharp edges of their grief softened into something more manageable. They would never forget, but they were learning to carry the loss differently, not as a constant weight, but as a tender place in their hearts that reminded them what mattered. One Saturday morning, Aria awoke to find Ethan already up, standing by the bedroom window with his phone in his hand. "My mother called," he said when he noticed she was awake. Aria's heart sank. What did she want? "To invite us to dinner. She said she and my father have been thinking about things and they'd like to talk." He looked at her carefully. "I told her I'd have to discuss it with you first, that we're a team now and I don't make decisions that affect us without you." How did she respond to that? She was quiet for a moment, then she said, "I see you've changed." I told her, "Yes, I have, for the better." Aria got out of bed and stood beside him. "Do you want to go?" "Only if you do, only if you're ready, and only with clear boundaries about what happens if they can't be respectful." Aria thought about it, weighing her desire to never see Margaret and Robert again against her understanding of how much Ethan missed them. But she also thought about the work they'd done, the strength of their rebuilt relationship, and her own capacity for forgiveness, not for Margaret and Robert's sake, but for her own peace. "We can go," she said finally, "but on our terms. We leave if they're dismissive. We don't pretend everything is fine, and if they can't give a genuine apology, this is a one-time attempt." Ethan pulled her into his arms. "Thank you. Thank you for being willing to try, even after everything." "I'm not doing it for them," Aria said honestly. "I'm doing it for us, because I don't want their absence to define our marriage any more than their presence did." The dinner was scheduled for the following Friday. As the day approached, Aria felt her anxiety building, but she also felt Ethan's steady presence. He checked in with her constantly, reminded her they could cancel anytime, made sure she knew that her comfort mattered more than his parents' expectations. When Friday arrived, they dressed carefully, Aria in a simple navy dress, Ethan in slacks and button-down. Before leaving, they stood together in the memorial garden, drawing strength from the peaceful space they'd created. "Whatever happens tonight," Ethan said, "we're okay. We've already done the hard work. This is just closing a chapter, one way or another." "Together," Aria added. "Always together," he confirmed. The Sullivan house looked exactly the same, imposing, perfect, cold, but Aria felt different walking up to the door. She wasn't the woman who desperately wanted their approval anymore. She was someone who knew her worth, who'd fought for her marriage and won, who'd learned that love required courage. Margaret answered the door, and for the first time, Aria saw uncertainty in her expression. "Aria, Ethan, please come in." The dinner was awkward at first, everyone navigating careful small talk, but as they moved to the dining room, Robert cleared his cough. "We asked